Hi everyone, thank you very much for coming along tonight. My name is James Lucas. I'm the organizer and founder of the user group. So I'm going to show you through a few slides to begin with, just to introduce what we're going to talk about tonight. And then at the end, there's going to be plenty of time for questions. So if you are logged in via GoToWebinar rather than on the phone, you'll be able to see a place where you can ask questions. So please do as we go along, and we will make time to answer as many of your questions as we can at the end. So hopefully you can all see my screen. So I'll just I'll get started now. So we've got 3 speakers tonight, and I'll introduce you to each one of them in turn. As mentioned in the advertising for this event, all 3 speakers are doubly certified by AWS, having the Solutions Architect Professional and DevOps Professional certifications. They've got lots of experience in taking various exams with AWS. So as you probably all know, cloud skills are very much in demand, not only in Scotland and the UK, but across the whole world. So cloud computing in 2019 was the #1 hard skill as found by LinkedIn. I looked up the figures for 2020 similarly. COVID's not made a dent on that. This is more demand than ever. And various skills related to cloud computing are listed across the top 10. So things like Bitcoin and artificial intelligence, which you can also use various things like that with AWS, are also in the top 10. So it's a very good area to focus your career onto. On that note, as well as being founder of the user group, I'm the founder and CEO of Cirrus HQ, which is an AWS consulting partner, and we are hiring at the moment as well. So we've got 3 job roles listed at the moment on the screen there, and there's a link if you want to find out more on our website about the roles that are available. We do plan to hire a good number of extra people up in the next few months. So if one of these roles isn't suitable, but you are interested in working with us, please have a look at the website, send your CV in anyway, and for the right candidates, we will find the right fit for you. So here's the rough agenda tonight. As I said, it's all about certifications and working towards them and how people can help get you there. So I'll give you intros on the 3 speakers in a second, and then I'll hand over to the other 2 speakers for a bit more in depth around the basics and then how to prepare and tips towards the end. And then, as I said, we'll have a Q&A at the end. This is me, so founder and CEO of Cirrus HQ. I've had both professional certifications from AWS for the last 5 years now. They are very much valued. They're very, very important, I think, if you want a career in this area, to focus on certifications. As on the screen, my top tips for prepare. My #1 would be pick a target date. If you don't pick a date, you will never get around to doing it. So plan it from there, and incrementally works very well. One of our colleagues, when he was going through the early stages, used to spend an hour a night, as an example, working on something. He went on to do his associate exam and got 100%. So it works very well. I find that much better for me personally than doing a cramming session. Our second speaker is John Walker. He is the professional services team lead at Cirrus HQ. As you can see from the screen, he's got 5 certifications from AWS, including both professionals. I'll leave the slide up there for a second to talk, but I'll let John Walker talk more in a second about what he does and his tips for his certifications.
Yeah, thanks, James. So, hi, everyone. So, as James mentioned, I'm John Walker, the professional services team lead. And a few of the tips that I've got for practicing is, my top one is finding the best learning method that works for you. Some people like watching the videos and going through training courses on things like A Cloud Guru or Linux Academy. Some people like the deep dive videos, but using the tests and documentation can also be a good way of upping your knowledge and finding the right way to learn for you. Okay, so
thanks, John.
With that, I'll hand back to you.
And next we have Mahil Vannan, our technical lead. Similarly, I think Mahil's had the certifications from, he's 15 now as well, so almost as long as I have. Mahil, do you want to say a brief hello?
Hi guys, I'm Mahil and I'm the technical lead at SearchHQ, as James said. Yeah, I've been having the AWS certifications for quite some time now. I think nearly four and a half years. And I think one of the top tips I have is basically to go through the FAQs, and they kind of tell you what the patterns and anti-patterns are, and also have a read through the white papers, because they give you in detail about like best practices that you should be doing, and which are all quite useful when you come and attack the certification questions. So
great, thank you, Mahil. So on to John for going through a bit more of the basics about the certifications.
And just to my camera on as well. So in terms of the basics, so to work your way through the AWS exams, to allow you to actually have these 4 points of recognition, credibility, the confidence in your skills and the performance, the certifications allow you to have your skills identified. Sorry, I'm sharing my window proper. So yeah, so the AWS skills allow you to have your skills certified, so that not only yourself, but also the organizations that you work for know the capabilities you have. And if you work within an organization that's part of the partner network, as we do, then AWS employees actually help allow you to gain recognition within the AWS partner network and show that your team is skilled within there. So in an organization that's starting to use AWS, one of the things that AWS has said is that 52% of IT professionals have said that their organizations seek their expertise more often. So you can become the go-to AWS expert within your team, and that allows you to expand your skills and give that recognition out from your team. And while you're actually preparing for the exam as well, you actually gain valuable knowledge and skills while you're doing that. The IT professionals, again, were surveyed and said that 45% of them had implemented efficiencies, and 43% had reported faster job performance. So it allows you to expand your knowledge within AWS and learn as you're going through the certifications, while also validating the same skills that you have. And lastly, the AWS certified individuals are generally among the top paid IT professions. Sorry, back one. So, excuse me. The way that AWS organise their certifications, there are certifications for all levels of experience. You have the cloud practitioner, which is a sort of general overview, up through the associate and professional exams, and then the speciality exams. And we'll go through those in a second. There are no prerequisites for any of the exams. However, one thing that I would mention is that if you're going to go for one of the professional exams, doing at least one of the associate exams first is useful to get you used to the types of questions that are asked and the methods that AWS use to actually test your knowledge base. The pro exams do expand a lot on those, but the general format is the same. When you're taking the exams, whether you take them at home or in a test centre, you do have a time limit on those, and the time limit is different for each exam because there's more exams for more questions for the pro levels. You can test in a test centre or at home with the online proctoring, and the AWS provide training materials that you can use. Some of those are really useful. There's especially ones for the exam preparedness, where AWS will teach you how to read the questions that they've got in great detail and pick out the salient points and actually narrow down your question so that you can, if you've got 4 answers within a particular question, you can quickly narrow it down to 2 options that you can then go further on and figure out exactly the right answer. So I found that one really useful myself. So as I mentioned, there are quite a number of exams. So at the moment, there are 12 certifications. The foundational cloud practitioner one is the one that shows your general overall knowledge of what AWS offers. So this is at quite a high level of the types of tools that you can use within AWS and what those tools are actually used for and what your workloads can turn into. The associate level exams are then split into 3 separate areas: the Solutions Architect, Associate, SysOps Administrator, and Developer. And those focus in on the different areas within AWS, where the Solutions Architect is focused on the building out of new architecture and using things like CloudFormation to deploy infrastructure as code into AWS. The SysOps Administrator covers a lot of the day-to-day tasks of maintaining the infrastructure in AWS. So that will include things like monitoring and notification, auto-scaling, etc. The Developer Associate covers a lot of the development tools that AWS provides, so things like code deploy, code pipeline, and even things like CodeStar and code commit. So the tools that you would actually use to build applications and deploy them within AWS. Then we've got to the professional level, and there's only 2 certifications on the professional level. The operations and developer ones are recommended as the lead-in certifications into the DevOps engineer professional, and then the solutions architect one turns into the solutions architect professional. Excuse me. They follow on the same themes from the associate levels, but they go into much more detail of each of the individual uses. And for example, on the solutions architect professional, what you'll find is the question may be a scenario from a customer who is wanting to migrate to AWS, and they have very specific use cases or very specific requirements for the storage. So you need to find the best method of migration over from an on-premise environment into AWS and how you would approach that as an architect. The specialty exams are where AWS are taking more of a focus on one area of IT profession. So for example, the advanced networking covers a lot of the networking within AWS, how that's set up and how that's actually different from an on-premise environment. It also goes into depth in how you actually connect on-premise sites into AWS, how you use that for migration, and a lot of the networking background and how that would transfer into AWS. And the other specialty exams there, we've got the security one, which obviously covers everything to do with security in AWS across all the different applications that AWS provide. The machine learning specialty, a lot of that focuses on things like SageMaker, and AWS is really pushing machine learning quite a lot. So they've come out with quite a lot of different tools that you can use on AWS. So using things like TensorFlow or any other machine learning that exists outside of AWS within. The Alexa Skill Builder is an exam for building new Alexa skills, so that you can deploy those as skills to anyone that uses Alexa, and it allows you to interact with the speaker and provide different levels of questions and responses, and it shows you how to build through that. Data analytics covers a lot of the sort of big data side of AWS. Sorry, this one used to actually be called the big data specialty exam, but they've made it more into the data analytics, so that it covers not only big data but things. A lot of the analytics that AWS provide, there's a number of services that you can use to hook up to the big data side of things, whether you're producing a data lake or anything similar. So, and the last one is the database speciality one, where that covers the use of the AWS's RDS system, the relational database, but also covers DynamoDB, the NoSQL database, the MongoDB compatible one, and Aurora, and whether that's the RDS version or the serverless version. And that allows you to show that your database skills are transferable to AWS and how they apply to the AWS ecosystem. And then the next I'm going to pass over to my colleague Mo.
Hi guys, I'm just going to talk about, thanks John for expanding on how the different certification exams out there. I'm going to try and talk about how you approach preparing for these certification exams and how how you should be readying yourself to get the next level, go to the next level from that. So from experience, I usually have like 4 stages that I go through whenever I'm sitting through an exam, and I've sat through like 5 exams, and given the time that I've had the certificates, I had to resit like for a recertification. The certification exams expire once in 3 years. It used to be once in 2 years. Now they've increased it to once in 3 years. And because of that, I would be like, Yep, sorry, just changing the presenter there. Anyway, so there's 4 stages that I was talking about, right? So I set myself a specific goal, and then I kind of self-assess and find the areas that I am weak in. I will go through the self-assess and prepare phase in detail in the next few slides, and then basically take the exam. So the main important thing here is that you need to be aware of what your gaps are, and you do that by going through different things like looking at sample questions. There are multiple different providers who give practice exams and things like that, so you take them. And there is also like an Amazon provided practice exam. So usually I take that practice exam the first step, and I find which questions I get wrong, and then go from there and trying to find the areas where I need to brush up on. Going into deep down about like self-assess and preparing phase, there is like 9 different stages in here, right? So we would go, I usually then first of all look at the exam guide, and then take some training. And I've already got some practical experience in Amazon, given that I work with it day in, day out. But everybody, I kind of encourage everyone to go and sign up for a free tier account, so you get like a free for a year kind of thing in Amazon, and you kind of explore and you can work on different technologies in it, and then you review the sample questions that are associated along with the exam guide. And these are, when I used to take them, they didn't actually publish the answers for the sample questions, and you had to research and you had to find that on your own. Now they have actually provided those answers, which makes it a little bit more easier to prepare for it. And I think when I started, like one of my pro tips when I was speaking in my introduction was about the FAQs, right? And they've called it out here as well. So FAQs are one of the most important learning materials that is available when you're preparing for an exam. You can find FAQs for each and every service that Amazon gives. And what they give is like information regarding where you should be using those services, and more importantly, where you shouldn't be using those services, because that is one of, because when you're approaching a question, if you are eliminating the wrong answers, you end up with the right answer. So that is a very key kind of an approach that I usually take. The white papers also give a lot more deep understanding of the domains and the topics underneath those domains, and it is also very useful not just for certification, but also in your job role as well, because what they do is they talk about best practices, and there's various different best practices that is applicable for different scenarios, and going through these white papers give you a much better understanding of those things, and that's very useful. And I think John already mentioned about the AWS training and exam readiness course. If you haven't already seen it, I very much recommend you to go and look at those things, because they in-depth talk about how the question is structured, which, how you approach these questions just by reading these questions, because each exam has like a different time limit. And usually, for example, let's say you have like 180 minutes and you have like 60 questions, you get like 3 minutes for a question, right? So they talk about how you use those 3 minutes very effectively so that you can read the whole question, understand, and choose the right answers. So it is a very important piece in the training roadmap. And you take a practice exam, and as I was saying, the practice exam, Amazon provides a practice exam, and this exam is like 20 questions to start with, and you are tested like you would be tested during a certification exam. It's time limited. You have to log into a system and answer these questions, and it goes through the usual process how it goes through in the actual exam itself, except that you're not proctored. And it will give you an answer that you've passed or failed at the end of the exam as well, practice exam as well, which then you can retake this exam as many times as you want, and each time, and that will then give you an understanding of where your gaps are. So, and the key bit here is repeat these steps about doing the exam, finding your gaps, learning and filling those gaps, come back, write an exam again, and if you find there's more gaps, you go and do it as a loop until you are confident. And this is very important. Until you feel you're confident enough to take the exam, you keep repeating these things. So I was talking about the first step in my preparation. I was talking about the exam guide as well, right? So the exam guide is actually supplied by Amazon in their certification portal. You can just Google Amazon certification and it will actually come up with a portal where they talk about all the different certifications, and you'll find the exam guides there. And the structure of the exam guide usually has like an introduction section, which covers what is the knowledge level that is expected, and what are the skills, and what it actually validates as an engineer or an architect, or or a specialty thing. Whatever you're doing, it tells you which areas it validates, and then it kind of gives a recommended knowledge level of different AWS services or general IT knowledge and things like that, right? And then it talks about the exam content itself. There are usually different, there's usually different types of questions that you get. Each exam has different types of questions associated with it. On a very high level, these are either a multiple choice question or a multiple response question. And pro exams, you also get scenario-based questions as well. And you either, and in the multiple response question, you have more than 2 right answers. And in multiple choice, you usually have just 1 right answer. The way to approach these questions are, I think I basically mentioned, sometimes it's, the answer is quite obvious, but you need to reread the question because there might be one word in there which then completely turns the question on its head. So you need to be aware, and you need to prepare on those points very thoroughly before you sit the exam. And there are unscored content in the examination as well, but you wouldn't know which question is scored and which question is not scored. And this basically kind of gives Amazon a kind of statistical information, and these are not like these questions do not affect your score. However, you wouldn't know which question is scored or not scored. And usually the exams are a pass or a fail. Like the results would be either a pass or a fail. And it's the scoring criteria is not usually made public. It's based on a weighted algorithm, and it's behind the scenes. Amazon decide those things. Usually, it's if you're above 70%, it's a pass. I've heard people who had 65% who passed, but I've also heard people who got 68% and failed. So it's based on that. It's based on the weightage of people who's taking the exam in that sense. And then comes the the content outline of how the whole exam is structured. It talks about the weightage of the domains each exam has. What I'm sharing on screen in here is basically the cloud practitioner exam, and here we have 4 domains: cloud concept, security and compliance, technology, billing, and pricing. And what you see in the right-hand side is the weightage of these questions. Also, as John mentioned, the number of questions differs from people person to person as well. So here the weightage of questions is important because 26% of how many ever questions you get will be cloud concepts. That kind of tells you how important a topic is in an exam, and you then get multiple topics underneath the domain, and you can go and prepare on those topics as well. Well, the next question then comes is, where do you start? There is AWS.training is the portal where you can go and get these courses that Amazon itself provides, and there are other third-party providers as well for things like video courses. There is deep dive videos available in YouTube, and people usually find it a little bit scary because the amount of stuff that there is out there to read. What I usually say is a roadmap. Once you fixed a date and then once you have a goal, the roadmap towards that goal, you can plan what you need to do. So that's what the ramp up guide is, right? So the ramp up guide and the learning paths kind of help you plan these things out. And you can spend an hour a day, or you can spend 2 hours a weekend or 4 hours every weekend or something like that, and then you prepared for these exams. And Amazon actually gives you a head start by creating learning paths, and they also provide classroom training. However, given the current COVID situation, all the classroom training is actually just virtual. Yeah, and as you're saying, AWS training, there's a lot of free courses in there, and exam readiness courses are all available there as well. And what I would also say is, don't just look at the courses that is very specific to the exam you're looking at, but also look at other courses around it, because you might never know. These other courses will also have more information that will help you in your exam as well. And the courses are all tailored towards a role or domain or a specific service, and it's also tailored to a level of expertise. Right, and because they're all on demand, it's available anytime, anywhere. You can just open it on your phone or your iPad or whatever, and you can learn these things. One more thing which I found from a tweet by Jeff Barr, there is this really nice site called awsvideocatalog.com, where they've actually gone, went through the pains of collating all the different deep dive videos that's available out there, and actually nicely cataloging them across by different topics, and that's what's available. And it's very easy and to go and find deep dive videos you want to find, and I would definitely recommend you guys go have a look at that when you're on your journey preparing for your exam. And I'm handing over to John for the next.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. So the next section is just to provide a number of tips that we'll come up with, and to help you on your journey to passing your exams. So as we've mentioned before, the committing to preparing for the exam is really key. It's very tempting to see a date in the future that's a month or two away and think, oh, I've got plenty of time. But having that schedule and prioritizing the time to actually sit and learn the content you need to do and go through the practice tests really helps you to prepare for the exam. It allows you to build on your knowledge and make sure that your understanding of the actual AWS resources, as well as the question types, so that you're fully prepared going into the exam. As Michael mentioned, there is opportunities to do practice tests. It's also recommended that you use as many of the hands-on labs as you can, and using the AWS free tier. A lot of the online training that you can sign up for things like Guru or the AWS preparation exams and the training will tell you when what you're about to deploy will actually cost more than what's in the free tier. The vast majority of what you'll be using will fit within there, but there will be some things like finding out how Redshift works, for example, that may not be covered. So it's just one thing you need to be aware of, that when you are using the AWS free tier or using an account, you keep an eye on the cost to make sure that it's not costing you money to run things just to learn on your exam. And it's useful to measure yourself of where you are in your journey at various points within the preparation for your exam. When you are doing the training, you can also almost feel like when you're listening through the videos and doing the test that you're not quite sure how far you are along. And a lot of these practice exams will tell you which domain that you are good in and which you need a bit more training in. One of the ways that I helped learn myself was that I found these practice tests on Udemy from a place called Tutorials Point. They have a full set of 4 exam questions, and they're not official questions, but they're very close. And I actually found going through that exam, spending the 3 or 4 hours to do the exam, then finding out which ones I got wrong and then putting more focus on those areas was really helpful for me passing the exams. As I mentioned as well, to scheduling your exam allows you to have that date on the calendar and plan backwards to where you are now, to say, right, okay, in these next weeks I'm going to learn this part of the exam that we need to do. Then in the weeks after that, I'm going to learn the next section. So it allows you to have that schedule there so that you can work through it and work towards your exam. And it's recommended that you build a support network. Quite often, even just having discussions with your colleagues about different areas that are on the exam, or your friends and family, can help solidify a particular piece of knowledge. There's been various times when I've been preparing for my exams, just having that conversation within our teams about a particular area that I'm not quite sure about the specifics of it. Just having a conversation with someone and sounding them out about it, and then can allow you to understand it a lot better. So in terms of the exam itself, the online proctoring is available, and you can take an exam at home. Essentially, you take a system test to make sure your system's all set up, and you need to make sure that your exam area where you're taking it is free from distractions, because even someone walking in the background can be enough for the proctor to say, no, we need to stop the exam. There have been some issues recently with the online proctoring. I know myself, when I was taking the DevOps Pro, I had issues with the proctor not being able to join, so I had to end up rescheduling the exam. My own personal preference would be to take the exam in an exam centre. Now, obviously, with the COVID-19, you would need to wear a mask, but I found that a lot easier to deal with than trying to deal with the online proctoring systems. But it is available there, and I know that people have been using it successfully. So it's worth investigating that on your own and figuring out whether that's a good route for you. The exams themselves, if you are taking them in a test centre, you can request accommodation for taking your exam. It's best to do this ahead of time and making sure that your accommodation is there. However, there are quite a number of test centres, so usually it's a case of just travelling to the test centre rather than having accommodation. If your first language isn't English, then Amazon will provide you a 30-minute time window, so that you can, just while you're reading the questions, so you can read and understand them a bit more, you get that extra 30 minutes for the whole exam. I believe that's standard across all the exams, so it won't increase for the pro level. Even though there are more questions, you will just get the extra 30 minutes. And when you're doing the exam, the way the exam works is you essentially get a full screen and all of the questions come up and you go through them in order and you can take notes. There is also a question flag button, so that if you're unsure on a question, or if it's something you just want to come back to later, you can flag it, usually with a button on the screen, and then at the end you can use those flags that you've placed throughout the exam to go back and just double check the questions that you've done, or answer any questions that you've missed. So that's really useful. I usually end up using that myself, probably for about 20 hours of the questions, where I think I've got the right answer, but I just want to double check it at the end just to make sure. And obviously, you need to think about the timing of it. As Michael mentioned, the number of questions, and especially the pro exams, can mean you only have 3 minutes or so for each question. So just try and use the practice tests for the full length ones to figure out how long it's taking you to answer each question, and making sure that you've given yourself enough time just to have a run through of the flagged questions, or even all of the questions if you have enough time, just to make sure that you've answered it as good as you can. I'd also say that once you get to that point in the exam and you've went through everything, if there are questions that you've not answered, it is worth just putting an answer down anyway, that even if you're not 100% sure on it, because if you don't answer a question, it's going to be marked as wrong anyway. So there's no harm putting an answer in there if you're unsure. And the detail here is the way the exam questions work, and especially in the higher level exams, is that a lot of the setup of the question will be usually quite lengthy, and there'll be keywords that you'll look in there. And as we mentioned before, the preparation courses from AWS really drill this down. They teach you how to read the question, pick out the keywords for what the question is actually asking. And what you'll actually find in some of them is that, especially at the pro level, there'll be questions where some of the answers will be correct, but they might not necessarily be exactly what the question was looking for. So you may have 2 examples where one question is a really highly available solution and it's really scalable, and then the other answer is maybe not quite as scalable, but it's more cost efficient. And it depends on what the question was, whether they're looking for the real high availability or they're looking for the cost side of things. So picking out those keywords like availability, reliability, cost can really help drive the question home. And once you've actually taken the exam, and if you pass, then you will be known as AWS Certified. And as Michael mentioned as well, you get 3 years is usually the time scale before you have to reset the exam. You'll start, I think it's about sort of 6 months before it expires. You'll get notified by AWS that that your exam is coming up for expiry. The way the exams work as well is that with the cloud practitioner at the lowest level, as you start to go up, if you've achieved the certification at each level, then the level below that will be automatically renewed. So, for example, if you get the Solutions Architect Associate, then it will automatically renew your Cloud Practitioner exam if you've got that certification. It won't give you low-level exams if you haven't sat them, but if you have sat them on the way to your journey towards the Pro, for example, then the lower ones below that will be recertified at the same time. So when you get to the level where you've got one of the professional exams, you don't need to worry about sitting all 4 exams that you sat on the way to get there. You just need to sit the professional level again, and the ones underneath that will recertify for you. Excuse me. And once you are certified, you'll get a notification email from Amazon, and they'll tell you that you passed, as well as when you actually finish the exam. When you hit the finish button and submit, it'll tell you there and then whether you passed or failed. But then Amazon will send you an email, usually a couple of days later, that will tell you in more detail which areas you were good at and which areas where you were below the score. You also get the proof of certification and some badges that you can share on social media and LinkedIn, that sort of thing. And there are also some vouchers that you get as well. So usually when you pass an exam, you'll get a voucher for a free practice test for any exam, and a 50% off voucher for any exam that you want to take. So those are really useful. You can end up sort of chaining those together as you go through your certification journey. And the next section I'm going to pass back to my colleague Michael.
Hey, okay. The next thing is about the AWS Certified Global Challenge, which is basically to, we were talking about how we all want to set a goal date and then work towards it. And this makes it easier because this is something that Amazon's kind of running, so that they want us all to work together and achieve a certification before reInvent 2020, which starts on November 30th. So there is a goal date. And the idea here behind this global challenge is that we all work together as a community, and you can ask questions between each other. There is like different groups out there. Even with this user group, you can post questions inside the user group, and we're happy to answer those things. And yeah, so that's the main thing. So how do you take part in this one? You sign up for the challenge. The link, we will share the link in the user group as a comment, as like a post in there. You can schedule an exam, put it in a calendar. There is like various roadmaps that can be, as I was saying, Amazon's given a nice little roadmap. There's like various training sessions. There is exam readiness sessions that's running between now and November 30, which you can attend to help you prepare and take the exam. And by just signing up, you actually are eligible for a free practice test to do the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner exam. And so just looping back to this one, right? So we were kind of thinking to have like a nice little user interaction session by doing a little poll, in a sense that we will review some of the questions that would possibly be asked in the Cloud Practitioner certification exam, which is very close to the actual questions. Just to give everybody a little feel of, writing exam. We've just tried to make it a little bit more fun and interactive. So hope that works with you guys. And let's, if I will start these questions now, right? And let me start the poll. I hope you should all start seeing the first question now. So the question here is about a hybrid cloud deployment allows organization to connect their cloud-based resources to their internal systems. Select one, true or false. Is the statement true or false, right? Oh, it's lovely to watch the percentage increase. That's 70% voted now.
Still a handful of you that are sitting listening to this in the background and aren't paying attention to the screen, so you're missing your chance to participate in the poll, so we can tell.
Great, that's over 80% answered. So the answer is, I'm closing the poll now. So the answer is actually true, and which almost 92% of you got right. Great. So let's move on to the next question. Edge locations are part of the AWS global infrastructure, which delivers content to end users in distant locations. True or false? Ooh, 70%. Yay, 83%, which was almost the same number of people who answered the last one. So the answer is actually true. Edge locations are what is used in CloudFront, the content distribution network, and they are spread out across the whole world. And they are used to kind of deliver content to end users in various different locations. They are different from regions and availability zones. In a sense, they're not like very specific data centers, but are spread across the world. So I'll close that one. Moving on to the next question. This one's like a multiple choice question, right? So you have to choose three. I'm launching the poll now. What are the different ways to communicate with AWS services? Do we communicate with Systems Manager, the console, CLI, SDKs, CloudFormation? This is slightly difficult, isn't it? Keys. I'm also looking at this for almost the first time. I'm kind of thinking, is CloudFormation a way to communicate with an AWS service? Probably not. So let's see how many people have got this right. So I think over 80% have actually got it right. So there's a few people who thought it was CloudFormation, but sadly, it's actually Management Console, CLI, and the SDKs. CloudFormation is not a direct way to communicate with AWS services. It is there so that we can specify and provision AWS resources and services as well, technically. So so that's quite a cool thing. Moving on to the fourth question. Another true or false one. Amazon S3 provides just 5 terabytes of cloud storage. I think we reached the percentage of people who's answering these questions. So the answer is actually false. And hey ho, 96% of the people got it right. S3 is one of the oldest services Amazon released, if not the first. It actually is unlimited storage, right? It is a block. No, it's an object level storage. It's an object storage, and it is actually unlimited storage. However, there are limits around the size of a single object, which is where the 5 terabytes comes from. It's not a single object, I think, is a 5 terabytes. Correct me if I'm wrong here, right? From vague memory from years ago. That's, a single object is that answer for that. Anyways, we got that one right. So I'm closing this poll. This was false. Moving on to the fifth question. This kind of a question usually comes in professional exams as well. A scenario-based question. They will talk about an actual kind of like a theoretical company. They want to do X, Y, Z, that kind of a thing. So here we're talking about the CTO of a example.com is looking for a way to find usage patterns in their organization's AWS spending. The CTO, I think the questions just got a little bit cut off. No. The CTO wants to find. Sorry, one second. CTO wants to see the spending base on a service per region per project basis. Which AWS solution would you recommend? So that's. What do you think, guys? Is it one question or more? Cool. I think we've reached the amount of people answering the questions now. So the answer, I'm closing the poll. So the answer now is Cost Explorer. It was a trick question. As you would have seen, select one or more answers, right? So there is just one correct answer. There is not like more than one. Savings plan would possibly savings plan and trusted advisor is where people have been answering. They are possible solutions. Savings plan is like reserved instances. You can apply and reduce costs. It doesn't tell you on a project, or per service or project per project basis where you're spending. Trusted advisor is there so that you can. It kind of gives you advice about your whole infrastructure, where it does a bunch of security checks and things like that, and it tells you if you're compliant in a sense. Are you doing best practice? Have you enabled MFA on your root account, root IAM account, root account, right? So that kind of a thing. So with that, I think I'm passing on to John to continue this polls now, and over to you, John.
Yep. Next one. Let me just share my screen again. So next question is, it's another true or false question. So I'll start the poll on this one. So which of these following statements is true? A region belongs in an availability zone, an availability zone belongs to a region, or regions and availability zones have no relationship. Numbers will decline in that. Okay, get a few more seconds. Then 90% voted on this one. Okay, so I think that's it. So I'll close this box. So the answer on this one is B. An availability zone belongs in a region. So this is a real question I've seen on the exam where the region is a general physical area, and you'll have multiple availability zones within a region. Okay, so going to the next question here. So which of the following support plans? Which of the following support plans in AWS provide you with a technical account manager role to provide support to you? So is that enterprise, business, developer, or basic? Number voted climate. I think that's hit 86%. Just get a few more seconds. Okay, so I'll close the poll on this one. So the answer to this one is the enterprise level. So what you may have, if you've worked with AWS or worked in an organization that has worked with AWS, you may have come across the term a TAM, and that stands for Technical Account Manager. And you only get that at the enterprise level. So I'll move on to the next poll. So which of these answers is the responsibility of AWS under the shared responsibility model? Is that configuring third-party applications, maintaining physical hardware, securing applications, accessing data, or managing custom Amazon machine images or AMIs? And the 86% voted Yahoo again. Got a few seconds. Okay, now I'll close the poll off now. So yeah, so 81% of you got that one correct. So the answer is B, maintaining physical hardware. So anything above the hypervisor level where you actually install applications is the responsibility of the customer. There is a good shared responsibility model document that shows you each area and where the responsibilities lie. It's good to study that one, especially with a cloud practitioner. Okay, and the next question. So I'll launch a poll. So which service automatically distributes traffic across multiple resources and availability zones? Is that Amazon EC2, AWS Lambda, Amazon EC2 autoscaling, or Amazon EC2 elastic load balancing? 72% voted. Just give us a few more seconds. Nearly there. Okay, so close the poll off now. So on that one, 83% of you have voted for elastic load balancing, and that is the correct answer. So there are other ways you can do load balance as well. There are network and application load balancers. In this question, they're looking for the elastic load balancer service as a whole. And the final questions we have here, just launch the poll. So which AWS tool would be the best choice to apply security policies to multiple accounts? So is that AWS Organizations, Cost Explorer, CloudTrail, or Amazon CloudWatch? Number of votes climbing, so 83% now. Let's give it a few more seconds. So 86%, so I'll close the poll off. So the answer to this one is AWS Organizations. So Organizations is a good way for you to control multiple accounts, so that if you have a single master account and then you can have a production account, a dev account, all sorts of ways that you can organize it. You can also create accounts from the AWS Organizations console, and the organizations then allow you to apply service control policies, so that allows you to say, for example, if you don't want people to be able to create VPCs in one of your accounts, you can do that with a service control policy, and even if you've got admin access in that restricted account, you won't be able to create them. Okay, so I think that's the polls done now. So I think that went really well. I think there's good broad range of answers there, and we'll bring in Mel and James again. We'll see if anybody's got any questions that they'd like answered.
Yep. So I've got a couple of questions we've received while the talk's been going on. So if you've got any other questions you'd like to ask just while we're answering these couple, now's the time to ask. As I said, it's in the GoToMeeting interface. There's a little section for questions, so just type in there and we'll hopefully get some more. So the questions we've had so far are: do you require certificates from candidates applying to your company? If yes, which ones? The answer is we don't require them. We hire people with certificates and without certificates. It obviously does help if, a number of the people we've hired in the past, if they've got the certifications already, it does make you stand out, whether that's applying to us or another partner or another company entirely. That does help you stand out. It really does. In the AWS world, it makes a huge difference if you've got certifications. If you are looking at our jobs and you're thinking, well, maybe I'll try those certifications in a month or so, send your CV in now anyway and say you're working towards it. You don't need to wait and see. And the other question we had was, is the exam worded in a way to test my AWS knowledge or my English? I think John covered this very well, because the question we received was before John's bit on that. But it's not, it's very much to test your AWS knowledge. But it is tricky. I mean, there are ones where there's one word difference between two answers, particularly on the professional levels. And you being in your native language, it does help, but it doesn't necessarily solve everything. I can sit there in a professional exam and go, which one is it out of those two? It doesn't be on end all. You can take, I looked it up while we're doing that, you can, some of the exams, I think they differ depending on the exam, you can take in other languages. So for example, the Solution Architect Associate is available in English, Japanese, Korean, and Simplified Chinese. So there are other options. It's great. We've just had a few questions flying in while I've been talking, so I'll just start having a quick look at those. How much value is added in having all 12 exams? Probably quite a lot, but you're going to have to really put in a lot of effort to do all 12 exams. I'm aware of people that have 11. I don't think I know anyone personally that's got all 12. I don't know who finds the time to do all 12. It's a lot of effort. The speciality ones are kind of equivalent of pros, so you need to have a lot of on-the-job experience to do the kind of professional ones. As I think the one part of the guide earlier was 2 years experience to do a professional, so it's a lot of experience in each area. So I'd say when you're starting out, pick an associate, pick a professional after that, unless you've got a lot of existing experience in an area where there's a speciality one. So if you've got a networking background, a security background, still do an associate first of all to get you used to how the exams work, and then do the speciality one. Multiple ones are obviously great, but there's you don't add a huge of extra value after you've got a couple of professionals, if that makes sense. In terms of you're not going to suddenly get your salary keep going up and up and up if you keep taking more. Just going down the lists. I mean, I'll defer the next one, I think, to descriptions to John and Mahal. So are the professional exams all multiple choice as well? Is there anything differentiates these significantly from associate level exams? And I'll say, yes, they are all multiple choice in that kind of area, but I'll let Mahal and John answer on the perspective of what's the difference between them.
Sure. Yeah, I can answer that. So, and generally, all the questions will be multiple choice, but sometimes, as you've seen in the questions, it will be choose 3 of these or choose 1 or more of these. So every question will follow that format. You'll get a description and then answers that you need to go through. Some questions will have 3 or 4 right responses, answers, and some may even have 5 or 6 that you need to choose multiple from. In terms of the associate to the pro level, the format of the questions is the same. What you'll find is that the sort of more in-depth questions where you have a sort of longer description and more options to choose, there are more of those on the pro exams than there are on the associate exams. The associate exams will have some of them, but they'll be more geared towards the simpler type of questions with the single right answer that you need to choose.
Yep, my only thing there was that scenario-based questions in professional exams, there is a lot of scenario-based questions, which is like, when we covered during the polls, right, there is a question about a CTO wanting XYZ. You will find those type of questions a lot more in the professional exams as well when you compare it to associate. Associate does have it, but not in the amount the professional has it.
Yeah, and the scenario ones are realistic. They're based on, if you're working for an Amazon partner, they're based on the kind of scenarios you will deal with. It is relevant to it.
Yeah.
If you're working for an organization, you may not come across those situations quite so much. Got a few more questions.
So I was just going to say, I found that on the DevOps Pro exam I did, there was at least 2 questions that I could pretty much directly tie back to what we were doing for existing customers.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Next question. I've done a project, use lambdas, message queues, etc., but you've not done anything in depth. You got most of the questions in the poll correct. Should I be ready for the entry exam? Well, those questions are example questions from the cloud practitioner. So if you've got most of them right, you might well be ready for them. We always recommend with any exam, even the cloud practitioner, do a practice one first. Then there's official practice ones. If you're using sites like Cloud Guru, Linux Academy, things like that to help with your learning, they've also got practice ones. I'd always do a practice one first. One of the other things being is under the timed conditions, because it does make you realize quite how quick you might have to be. It's not too bad on the practitioner and the associates. The professional one, you are rushing the whole way. You don't get time to sit and just think your way through. The professional one's 3 hours, and you use every minute of it. Even with huge amounts of experience, you use every minute of it. So always do a practice one first, but yes, absolutely, you sound like you're on your way to be the cloud practitioner. I think similar question, well, related question, would you recommend doing a practice exam earlier in your learning to show where you need to improve, or later to prime you for the exam. It works both ways. I mean, I think that's part of doing practice exams all the way along. I've got some of mine, unfortunately, I've got to redo in the next few months because my 3 years have run out. I'm going to go and sit and practice one straight away, work out if I've got any weak points and what's changed, and then I'll probably set another one, towards the end when I feel I'm ready. So that's where the balance of you sit and practice one, I say Cloud Guru, versus paying for the ones is kind of $20 a time for the one of the real conditions. But I would say, a mixture of both for that, depending on how hard the exam is and how much you can afford to do multiple practice exams and things like that. But it's certainly worth doing the practice ones. Is it possible, someone says, to give salary range for the opportunities available in your organization? I think there's a wide range of salaries depending on the position. I think I would absolutely say we pay a market, if not above market rate, for the positions we have an offer. But as everyone says, and I know that people hate the answer, it does depending on experience, and we're quite happy to have an open conversation with candidates if they want to apply, about salary and their expectations around those things. Next one. Can I take an associate without foundation exam first? Yes, you can. You could even take a professional without a foundation exam first. I really wouldn't recommend it though. It's a case of giving you that amount of experience. So yes, most people, I mean, the cloud practitioner exams are comparatively recent, and associate used to be the starting point. And so plenty of people have done the associate first. I'd still probably personally recommend, even from a psychological perspective, if you're just starting out, doing the cloud practitioner first of all. But no, you don't have to.
Yeah. Even from an exam taking perspective, it gives you the experience there, but also, as I mentioned, you get the free practice test voucher and a 50% off voucher on your next exam.
Yep.
So it's useful for you from that point of view.
Save money all the way along rather than jumping at the end. The questions are still flooding in, which is great. Thank you. So I'm just scrolling as we go. So what are the DevOps tools you use in your organization? So we use, we're Amazon specific in Cirrus. We don't work with Azure or Google and things like that. So everything Amazon related, but obviously things like GitHub and things like that as well. Rahul, John, I don't know if you want to chip in on your more hands-on.
Yep, GitHub, like code pipeline, Codebowl, Jenkins, name one. Or we actually have the DevOps competency from Amazon as well as a company, so which kind of validates all our DevOps tools, our DevOps practices and everything around it as well, right? Tools wise, we are also using New Relic, Amazon specifically, CloudWatch, Logs, Insights for monitoring, X-ray for deep tracing. Yeah, almost everything that Amazon offers, we have pretty much used them in most of our customers.
Yeah, and just one thing to add to it, because we're a partner and work with multiple different customers, we adapt to how they would work. So if a customer comes to us and they use a specific DevOps tool already, we'll adapt to their workflow and build that into how we support them.
Yep, that is one of the main reasons that why we have such a varied list of tools and in our arsenal, kind of a thing, right? So yeah.
Absolutely, thank you. A few more questions, which is great. Really glad to see all the questions coming in. Have you come across a person who holds several certificates but hands-on skills are quite low? Yes, we have. As a part of our interviewing process, if you get past kind of the initial interviews, we will do a technical test that is customized to what's been discussed in the interview, so we don't give you a generic one. And we have had people that have had professional certifications, and then when they've come to do a fairly low-level technical test, they have failed it miserably. So that is part of kind of our hiring process. So yeah, it is entirely possible to do this on a book learning basis, but not actually have the practical skills. So that kind of links in with another couple of questions, very, very similar questions. We've had, would you potentially hire someone with certifications but no experience? Somebody asked, and then another question, would someone be considered for cloud-based roles if they pass the practitioner exam but don't have any actual experience? Everyone we that we get to interview stage is done on merit. So the main thing is about transferable skills. So we've hired, if you've got some decent Linux experience, for example, and you're weak on the Amazon side, we've hired people like that, and obviously we're happy to train people up and put effort in that way. It's all about the individual candidate and what they can bring to the role, so it varies. And one of our colleagues that has also got a professional exam, one of our solutions architects, joined us as a junior system administrator, and I think he had a couple of associates. I mean, he'd actually taken an extreme step of, he left his previous job and entirely focused on doing the exams and then applied to us. So not only did he stand out in the interview process, but he had some previous experience, but not extensive previous experience. And then he's carried on learning on the job past his professional, once he joined us and things like that. So it is possible. Everyone is considered on a case-by-case basis. We don't just filter out on generic criteria and then things like that. So yeah, if you're interested in the role, send your CV, and the worst that happens is that you don't get an interview.
Just to add to that, most of our junior roles, like the current juniors that we have, they never actually had any Amazon experience. They all just had transferable Linux or Windows skills, right? They just joined us, and they got trained as they worked with us, and they've grown in their roles, which we are all quite proud of, actually, as a company, right? So that's, yeah, so it doesn't limit you, no. Absolutely.
It's something we're very proud of, is training up juniors and then seeing them grow into their roles. Is exam updated as new features are released on AWS? That is a very good question, and it's a tricky situation, because yes, they are. They don't do it incrementally, though. They will release a new version of it, and it can be tricky, because when you're answering a question, particularly on the professional level, you have to think, when was this exam released? What was the correct answer when they released this exam? Because AWS evolves so much. Sometimes the correct answer now is not the correct answer on the exam. It doesn't happen too much, but it does happen, because Amazon have since released another service that does change the answer. So it is it's something you need to be aware of, but they don't do it in secret. They do publicly say, right, here's a new version that's coming out. But once a year at most, isn't it? It's not overly frequent.
Yeah,
that's part.
Yeah, it's like about a week.
Yeah, I think one of the experience from my exam, right? When I actually sat my recertification for my SA Pro, I had this question: can you reassociate an IAM role associated with an EC2 instance? Literally, a month ago, Amazon released a feature that you can. You don't need to recreate the instance or assign a role. But the exam was created at a time when you can't. So even though I knew you can, I had to answer false. So yeah, it does happen.
Thank you. Yeah, it's exactly that kind of thing. Couple more questions. The best place to send a CV in? Thank you very much for the interest, for the people that have asked. Jobs@siriushq.com will be absolutely fine. Thank you. That goes to all the right people that deal with the CVs, and then they pass it on to the relevant teams internally. Somebody else: I'm far from Edinburgh. Do we take candidates on full-time work from home, remote basis? Last year I'd have said no. This year with COVID, it's a bit more complicated. Again, everyone's taken on their merits. We do have people in Oxford and London. It is still a case-by-case basis, depending on where they are, what skills they bring, how practical that is, depending on where they live, and things like that. So there's no reason you shouldn't apply. What we would always suggest is, if you're in a situation like that, in fact, in any situation, and particularly if you're going to email something in rather than applying via LinkedIn, put in a cover letter explaining what you're looking for. If you're not local to the office, in central Scotland, things like that, are you planning on moving to the office? Moving to Scotland, we get quite a lot of people applying that are moving up from London and things like that. You'd need full remote basis, a bit about you, things like that. A cover letter makes a huge difference in standing out as a candidate. Covered that one. So I think the last question I've got at the moment, unless there's any more coming while we're talking, do individual projects help you stand out during interviews? I certainly think so. John and Mahal do more of the interviewing than I do now, so I will hand back to them for their inputs.
It most definitely does. When you're coming in, with relatively low cloud experience or anything like that, the projects that you've done kind of showcases transferable skills, because yes, cloud is cloud is like a technology, and it's a fancy word right now, but in the end, you are working with servers or serverless technology. You're working with Python, you're working with Linux, you're working with Windows. When you have that experience, it's easy enough to train you on the terminologies and the technologies that Amazon offers, and link those things up. So any nice projects that you've done, it can just be a personal project, it can be a project that you've worked with the company. They all show your initiative, they all show your transferable skills, they all showcase your skill sets. So, and they all showcase that you are willing to learn, right? So that's always the most important thing that we look for in a person, your willingness to learn and adapt. So yeah.
So that also shows interest in IT in general. If you're the sort of person that follows IT news and does personal projects, then it shows that you are interested in the sort of things that we would end up using in the cloud. Whether, as Michael said, whether you've actually had that experience in the cloud yet, you've got those transferable skills and you've got that interest and knowledge to move on.
Okay, we just had one more question came in. I know developers are in high demand, but what's the demand for AWS architects? A lot. Is all I can say. As I said, we've got a number of vacancies now and over the next few months. We know plenty of other companies are hiring too. It is there's probably more demand for solution architects and those kind of skills than there is for developers, frankly, in this kind of area. It's an area where you train up in these kind of skills, you will have a job easily, for the next decade in focusing in this area. It's not something we concern ourselves about. I mean, our entire company is based on working just with AWS, and we have no concerns at all about the demand for services going forward in these kind of skills. So at the moment, that's all the questions I've got. So I will give it just another minute or so, in case anyone's sitting there thinking, do I want to ask a question? And other than that, we will wrap up. So thank you everyone for coming along. It's been I found it really useful to learn. Hopefully you've all picked up something. I'm not sure who's got the. John's got it. John, can you just stick on the last slide for me, rather than switching over?
Yeah. Sorry. This one.
Yeah. That one's fine. Thank you. Okay, we have just one more question coming. I'll come to that in a second. So we mentioned the jobs thing. If anyone wants to get in touch about anything else, that's my email address on the screen. So drop me a line. That's not a problem at all. We had a few more questions come in. I'll just read through them. Is there enough if I get some AWS certs, or do you require some DevOps skills like Git, Terraform, things like that? They go hand in hand. As we've said, it's great people have the certificates, but there's you need hands-on technical abilities as well, and that is something we test as part of things. So our logic would be theoretical learning is great. You need practical learning. If you imagine you're going to get the job, you're going to start working on these kind of things. So having basic knowledge is better than nothing. But as I said, it depends what role you're applying for. If you're applying for the junior role, we expect a lot less in capabilities from people that are applying for senior roles and solution architects and things like that. That's why things like Linux Academy and Cloud Guru are very helpful, because they can teach you. There's courses in there across all sorts of other range of things, as well as cloud technologies. And then the last one, which I'll pass back to John and Mahal, because I don't know the specific answer. Does being certified give you only 150% discount on further AWS exams? So how does that work?
Every exam gives you a 50% off. So if you do 5, you get 50% off. Yeah, each one after, yeah.
Yeah, so even if you use your 50% voucher on, say you get a 50% voucher from doing Cloud Practitioner, and you then use that on the Solutions Architect Associate, If you pass that, you will then get another voucher that you could
Another
use
one.
on the Pro, and you can chain them.
Thank you. We've got some more questions just coming in, so I'm just having a look at that. So we had another one on what tool do we use for creating modular documents? I mean, documentation varies depending on, because we share with our customers. In many cases, there's a variety of things. So if we do network diagrams and things like that, we use Lucidchart, and I think we use some other things. Visio gets used. Google Docs and things like that gets used a lot, and Confluence and things, because we work very closely with our customers. So a lot of it is based on what's suitable for our customers as well as what's suitable for us. So it varies depending on the customer we're working with. How many rounds in your interview can you elaborate on recruitment process? So we aren't one of these companies that push you through weeks and weeks of 17 interviews and things like that, compared to if you apply to Amazon yourself. A typical recruitment process, and it may be hard, harder the higher up you go in terms of applications, in terms of seniority, would be an initial chat just to understand what someone's looking for a role, fairly informal basis, but done via video. Sometimes that happens, sometimes that's skipped and it goes straight to a more formal interview. And then if we think that there's enough there to justify a technical test, we write a technical test that, as mentioned earlier, is customized a bit per person, so we can validate what you've said. It's designed to also push you a little bit, because in this business, working with AWS exclusively, you will be pushed every day because Amazon keep releasing new stuff. So everyone in the company is pushed by AWS themselves effectively to keep evolving. So part of the test is, how do you cope with dealing with something you don't quite understand? And it's not about a pass or fail. The technical test is that how do we how you deal with that kind of situation. And at that point, it's generally it. The more senior people recruitment, we may have a second interview. That depends on, at that point, that depends on how senior it is. But certainly in the more junior levels and mid levels, that's it. And at that point, you'll either get an offer or you'll get a thank you, but we don't think you're the right fit for us, if that makes sense. Someone's asked serverless versus, don't know if it's relevant, serverless versus cloud formation. I'm not quite sure I understand the question. In fact, you might mean SAM versus cloud formation in that context.
Serverless framework, I think that's what he's talking about. Yeah.
So I've dabbled with it, but I think Mahal and John probably know that structure.
I have my strong preference. I'm very much on a very cloud formation native coder in that sense. Serverless does give you, the framework does give you certain advantages in a sense. It makes it a little bit more easier for a developer to write, is my opinion. But I don't know, my preference is very much specific to cloud formation based ones, because it kind of then gives me direct, I talk to Amazon, I talk to Amazon resources directly via CloudFormation, whereas with serverless, when you compile serverless, it actually creates CloudFormation and then it creates Amazon resources. It goes through another step. It's basically a level of abstraction over CloudFormation, right? And because of that, you have it makes management of the CloudFormation that it gets created a bit more harder. So that's my personal viewpoint. So I kind of is in that camp. But I know people internally in the company who really love just writing serverless, who also really love writing CDK. CDK is really good as well. The Cloud Development Kit, which again is like an abstraction layer, and it does like pure infrastructure as code. So you write infrastructure in Python. It's not like you write it in YAML, and it's not a descriptive language. It's actually in code. So yeah, we have people like different things.
Yeah, I would just add to that, with serverless and CloudFormation, with the serverless side of things, you're going to speed up the development process, because it is a lot easier to use an application or thing like serverless to accelerate your development and make things easier. But I agree with you. I think that actually comes at the cost of maintainability and discovering where something's went wrong, because you're essentially generating something rather than having the exact thing that was there. So there's a balance there to be had. But I think we've actually used both as well.
Yep.
A few more questions keep flying in, so thank you very much for these. So someone asked, or Christoph asks, and he actually says, Sam's always behind with services. Yeah, this is the problem with some things like that. And so a follow-up question from somebody else, you use third-party orchestrators like Terraform. So similarly, Sam and CloudFormation, it can be frustrating because Amazon don't have a, they keep talking about it, but they don't have a, we'll launch a new service and CloudFormation will be there from day one. And things like Terraform can actually sometimes be there faster. It varies on things like that. As a company, we have a preference for things that are CloudFormation or CloudFormation related because we're AWS specific. I think we do have some use cases where Terraform is used because that's a customer preference, but the vast majority of what we do is CloudFormation or CloudFormation linked. Michael points out AWS CDK also just generates CloudFormation. Doesn't mean you shouldn't use the CDK. No, I mean, we're fans of the CDK. That's part of, we're evolving our usage of that at the moment. But Michael, John, if you want to chip in more on that.
Yeah, we have, as Jason, we have been using CDK in some instances. The generating of the template is really useful, and you can also use the sync as well to directly control the output through CDK. But yeah, I think it's one of the things with just using CloudFormation on its own is that when someone who needs to go in and investigate what's happened on something that has been deployed via CloudFormation, they can just go straight to the CloudFormation console and usually get that answer. They can see the template, they can see the inputs and outputs. So there are use cases for just having that on its own and using both. I think it really depends on the individual project and sometimes the customer preference as well. Because if we deploy something with CDK turning into CloudFormation, then obviously we then need to maintain that and keep it up to date. And if the customer wants to be involved in that process, then they'd also need to be involved in the CDK side of things and not just the CloudFormation side.
Absolutely. So the questions are still coming in, which is fantastic. Any thoughts on how best to approach certifying across AWS, Azure, Google? Approach serving at a similar level in parallel or a deep dive into one brand at a time? It depends what, where you work, what you're trying to get out, and what you're trying to achieve. I have a very strong preference on this, but everyone's got their own choices. I think know one thing very well and then look elsewhere. It's the same in organizations. Don't go trying to do something multi-cloud. Get your head around one cloud, do one cloud really well, whichever cloud that is, and then look at other things. And I think so on a personal basis and on an organization basis, I think it's much better to have a professional certification in a cloud than associate or kind of level certifications in 3 of them. That's my personal preference. Michael, John?
No, I completely agree with you, and I probably will go for a further level because I very much hate the term hybrid cloud. What you're basically doing is, unless you span a same service across multiple clouds, you're not actually using hybrid cloud. For example, let's say using S3 in Amazon and block storage in I forget what the term is in Azure, and if you're actually using the same both of them in an abstracted level and using the same data spread across multiple, you're not actually using hybrid cloud. If you're using S3 here and using the instances in Azure, that's just using 2 different services. So that's where my preference lies, right? So I'm very in the anti-hybrid cloud camp, I would say.
Yeah, I agree. Doing a deep dive on one of the clouds so that you can get all that knowledge, because one of the things that you will find is that the cloud providers have very similar services. So if you work your way up on both of them at the same time or multiples at the same time, you might think, okay, so how does this work in this one? Is it this way it works? And it can be very confusing. Whereas if you go fully into one and then into the other, you separate out those little details. It's things like which option do I need to pick for when I'm setting this up, which resources do I need, that sort of thing.
Yeah. I think there's a saying, right? Jack of all trades, master of none. I think as a company, we prefer to be master of a certain technology, right, instead of being a jack of all trades. So
yeah, 100%. We've been, as a company, been focused on AWS only for 7 years now, and that we have no intention of changing away. Several more questions come in while we were talking about that one. How do you convert monolithic apps into microservices? I think my answer would be carefully and incrementally. There's some fantastic features that have come out in the last year with AWS in terms of integration with load balancers and things like Lambda, so you can gradually split off traffic from a monolithic app into whether that is it's all the way to serverless with Lambdas, or whether you split part of it off into container-based technologies and things like that, depending on your evolution path. Yeah, incrementally is the way for me. I think you try and do anything with a big bang approach, you're never going to get it, or it'll all go wrong when you try and switch over things like that. Is my preference. John Mahal?
Yep, absolutely agree. I think, yeah, in a cloud journey, right, people always try and do a very small, and we've seen this across like one of our biggest customers, they only migrate a very small workload into cloud first. That gives them a taste, you know, and then they can expand and expand and expand and become cloud native, cloud first, and then become cloud native. So at the moment, everything, they just think cloud in their head, right? Very similar thing about monolith and microservices. Monolith, you basically take the monolith, you find a functionality which is very individual in that sense, like, and kind of isolated, and you take that, you turn it into a microservice, put it behind an API gateway, and basically break up the monolith into multiple microservices. It's a valid approach, and I think we are doing one of the migration projects which is very similar in that aspect, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's 2 more questions. At that point, I'll probably will wrap it up and call it tonight. At this point, is when do you prefer serverless over containers?
I think we wrote a really nice blog post.
Well, yeah, go and check out the website for more details. I think for me, I think that I see a real growth in the future in things like event-driven computing, which Lambda is part of it, and serverless is very much related to it. So it depends on what matches your needs. I think what we've seen in our customers is where they're evolving from legacy infrastructure. Some of them are skipping over containers entirely and going all the way to serverless. So if there's a subset of AWS functionality you want to focus on, I would suggest serverless technologies over container-based ones at the moment. In terms of where the demand is going to be in the future years, I think it is definitely more. My suggestion would be if you're picking between the 2 of them.
There is a little bit of like functionality thing as well. So there are limitations in serverless and there are limitations in containers. So I think you need to choose what fits your requirements rather than, and as James said, yes, serverless is going to have a huge, a huge growth phase, and most of the things that we are looking at, people are just completely skipping over containers because they are splitting things out down into such small, isolated pieces of functionality. They can just become microservices which just run for a very small amount of time, whereas containers, you are looking at things that are doing a longer pieces of processing. Some use cases that we've come across specifically are taking a legacy application, containerizing it. There is now like a new service Amazon offers which does exactly that, like Java application that used to run on big huge servers can be containerized and put into ECS, and that can then be scaled and things like that, right? So again, it's based on what the requirements ask for from a customer perspective that the preference lies, but I tend to go towards serverless because it makes sure it reduces like it makes sure there is not a lot of failures that happens between connectivities. That's why.
I'll just go ahead, and one of those limits you need to be aware of, especially if you're using something like Lambda, is that there is a 15-minute execution time. So you can actually use both as well. So you could have your front end running as serverless, but any long running tasks that you need running in containers. And so in that case, it would be a true hybrid approach in that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with Amazon is there's all sorts of options. There's an option for everything, isn't there? It's getting, why we're specialists in that area, just to do that. So the last question of the night is there a need to get multiple certifications, like 5 or 7 in AWS? There's not a need to do it, no. I think in terms of your journey through it, if you're starting out, if for example, you go cloud practitioner, SysOps associate, developer associate, DevOps pro, how many was that? Was that 4? I think, yeah, that's 4 certificates at that point up to your first professional. And then you stop and have a look at, well, what else interests you? I've got the 2 professionals and I've stopped there. John and Mahal have, you've got 5, I think, each. It's a matter of, how much time you have, what's your focus, things like that. What interests you. If you've got a real interest in networking, you're real interest in security, you want to pick up something about machine learning, yeah, keep going, absolutely. There's no reason to stop at all. It's a matter of finding how much time, because as I said, the harder the exams, it's a lot of effort to put into, and how much effort you can, and how much time you can find. Does it make a massive difference after the first professional? Not realistically, no, less so. Get to professional, absolutely, but it has less of an incremental impact after that. So I think that's us for the night. So thank you very much for everyone who attended. Thank you very much for everyone taking part in the polls and things like that. I think that was very successful. So as we said, any more questions, please post on the Meetup website or drop me an email. I'm happy to answer. But thank you all very much for coming. One last little shout out. Lauren, who's been here behind the scenes, helping run everything behind the scenes. So thank you very much, Lauren, for all your help with that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Good night, guys. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you.